continue on the path we are on. The Prime Minister says there's no reason for further measures in England amidst the surge of coronavirus cases due to the Omicron variant. Boris Johnson, visiting a vaccination site, hailed the progress of the booster rollout, but said hospitals will come under pressure.
The pressure on our NHS, on our hospitals, is going to be considerable in the course of the next couple of weeks and maybe more, because there's no question that Omicron continues to surge through the country.
Hospitals in Lincolnshire have declared a critical incident due to COVID-related staff shortages. Meanwhile, the government says keeping schools open is a priority and that pupils won't have to wear masks for a day longer than needed. Labour says not enough is being done. Also on the programme.
Guys, you can come through.
A new way of keeping children safe in high crime areas, using chaperones to help them to and from school. And we report on how the Queen will celebrate her Platinum Jubilee this year, when she becomes the first British monarch to reign for 70 years. Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. The Prime Minister has warned that the pressure on the NHS in England is going to be considerable in the coming weeks, but he insisted that the way forward for the country is to continue on the current path. It comes as the Education Secretary says the government is determined to keep schools open after learning a painful lesson from earlier closures. Nadim Zahawi confirmed all secondary pupils in England will be tested before returning this week. Labour have accused the government of not doing enough to reduce transmission and keep schools open. Here's our political correspondent, Chris Mason.
Happy New Year. Thank you very much for what we're doing.
The Prime Minister in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire this morning at a vaccination centre, as secondary schools in England are told to do what's already been happening in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Pupils wearing masks in class.
There's increasing body of scientific support for the idea that face masks can contain transmission. We don't want to keep them on. I don't like the idea of having face masks in classroom any more than anybody else does. We won't keep them on a day more than is necessary.
This is what the start of term looked like in secondary schools in England in September, and it'll look pretty similar in the next few days too, as pupils are tested at school before heading to lessons. This head teacher in Solihull in the West Midlands is a senior figure in the NAHT Teachers Union.
It's going to be challenging. We are yet again going into slightly an unknown of knowing what the impact is, not only on students, but I think more importantly on staffing and the ability to deliver the education that we want to deliver. I think I'd echo what everyone else has said. We want schools open, we want students in, but we are going into a little bit of the unknown. We have our staff to test and we'll be carrying out testing with students. Tomorrow was the first day back.
Labour claim the government hasn't done enough to make schools in England as safe as possible.
7,000 air purifiers across hundreds of thousands of classrooms in England just isn't good enough. They clearly recognise there is the need to take action, but for so many schools and so many head teachers, the answer has just been open windows and keep children in courts learning. Well, you know, we're in the middle of winter here, it's January. I don't think it's an adequate solution.
Meanwhile, NHS leaders are warning that they're seeing increasing numbers of staff not able to work because of COVID, just as they're dealing with what has been a big increase in people being sent to hospital with it. But there is some evidence from those running hospitals in London that things might be improving.
When I was talking to London chief execs last week, what they were saying is they were seeing some very concerning daily increases of the numbers of people coming into hospital, 9%, 15%, 9% on the 27th, 28th and 29th of December. But interestingly, in the last 2 days, those numbers have dropped the increases to 1% and 2%.
But remember, there is a time lag between people being infected and some ending up in hospital, and the government does expect a big increase in people being admitted in the coming weeks.
And Chris is here with us. Chris, what is the latest, the very latest from the government on restrictions?
So the consistent message we're hearing, both from the Prime Minister this morning and indeed from other ministers over the last 3 or 4 days now, is that despite the fact that they acknowledge, as I was reporting there, that there will be this big increase in the number in hospital with COVID in the coming weeks, they think as things stand, looking at the data at the moment, that the restrictions in England, which are more liberal than elsewhere in the UK, even if they've got a little closer with the request to wear masks in secondary school classrooms from this week, is that the measures in England are about right. That is the view of the government. So to talk you through the procedure in the next couple of days, there is going to be a review on Wednesday. That's been in the diary since Plan B, as it was known, was first implemented in the first week of last month. We'll probably hear, I think, from the Health Secretary in the Commons on Wednesday, but the expectation is he will say that the restrictions, such as they are in England, will remain the same. They'll be reviewed again towards the tail end of this month.
OK, Chris, thanks for that. Chris Mason there, our political correspondent. In some high crime inner city areas, children are being helped to and from school by adult chaperones. It's based on a successful scheme in Chicago and is being piloted in the West Midlands. The schools taking part have been chosen based on police intelligence, as our Midlands correspondent Phil Mackey reports.
Yeah, guys, you can come through, you can come through.
It's just a flood of children.
Thank you.
Towering above the children, leaving the Art Bolton Academy in Spark Hill in Birmingham, is Callum Dunn.
All right, guys, you want to come through?
He works for MAD, or Make a Difference, and he's one of a group of chaperones who keep students safe on their way into and out of school.
The chaperones are in the prominent places, if you like, so they're easily identifiable by the students. They're on key routes home and also in areas that we know are known hotspots. So they provide a refuge. So if there are students who feel they're at risk, who feel that they're vulnerable, they can see those chaperones. They're marked out MAD on their jackets, and then they can approach them, and then the chaperones can make sure that they feel safe.
His school is one of more than a dozen across the West Midlands, which is taking part in a pilot project called Step Together. In each case, the children have to use routes to and from school where drug dealing and gang crime are problems.
Thankfully, none of us have ever been involved in such violence across the streets, but we do know that obviously there are people out there, there are the dangers of the world out there, and you want to be protected in such situations. So the fact that these chaperones are out here now, it does make everybody feel 10 times safer.
I think that every student should get the chance to go home safely and not have to worry about anything like that. And it's more scary to go up to a stranger and ask for help, so to know that there are trained professionals there, that we know that they're there to protect us, then we can go to them.
The walk to and from school can be perilous for teenagers in big cities. An 18-year-old was stabbed to death barely a mile from here a few weeks ago.
This park is just a couple of minutes walk away from the school, so lots of people will congregate here and they might play football or cricket in the summer, but it's also a potential dangerous flashpoint because there's a lot of criminal activity here as well. Drug dealing, weapons have been stashed here, so that's why the chaperones come, not just to act as a point of reassurance for the children who use this, but also as a deterrent to the criminal activity.
We found a machete into the Ackers Woods, just up there.
Callum Dunn's brought me to the park that he and the other chaperones patrol after school. It's known as the Ackers and is right next to the Art Bolton Academy.
When bad things happen, it's not often in the eyesight of the public. So that's why green areas and big parks like this are often places where a lot of things will happen out of eyesight.
Callum says that because they spend so much time with the children, they get a sixth sense if something's wrong and can immediately detect if there's likely to be trouble. If it's a success, it's hoped these chaperones could become a more common sight elsewhere in England and Wales. Phil Mackey, BBC News, Birmingham.
A legal document which the Duke of York's lawyer believes will stop the civil case against him in the United States is expected to be made public today. Prince Andrew's lawyers say a settlement made in 2009 between Virginia Giuffre and the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein will release him from liability in the case brought by Miss Giuffre, who accuses him of sexual assault when she was 17. He has consistently denied the claims. Our legal correspondent, Dominic Casciani, is here. Dominic, what do we expect to happen today?
I think we're going to have a lot of noise today, but then I think it's going to go to a judge in New York tomorrow to actually hear what this document really amounts to. This document has been a confidential secret document for more than a decade now. It's getting unsealed in the American language, basically means it becomes public. Now, in her original action in Florida, Virginia Giuffre, who brings these allegations against Prince Andrew, says that she was exploited not just by Epstein, but his closest male peers, including, in her words, royalty. Now, she's never defined who that is. Prince Andrew's lawyers say that all the allegations that she makes are completely baseless. They're not true. But even if they were, this document prevents her from bringing the action. And this is the critical point in this case, really, because if the judge rules that this document does effectively bar any action, then it's game over for her and the case stops. However, of course, if the document is legally a little bit open to interpretation, going to be a lot of legal argument. That's going to go on tomorrow. We're going to hear further arguments from the Prince's lawyers that the case should be thrown out on all sorts of other grounds, including the fact that the complainant doesn't even live in the United States. Meanwhile, she's saying she wants evidence that the Prince himself doesn't sweat. If you remember, he said on Newsnight that an alleged meeting between them where she said he sweated profusely, he said it couldn't have happened because he doesn't sweat. So there's a lot to go into in the next couple of days in the New York courts.
OK, Dominic, many thanks for that. A critical incident has been declared at hospitals in Lincolnshire because of COVID-related staff shortages. The situation has been described as extreme and unprecedented by the NHS Trust that runs them. It says essential services remain open. Our correspondent Danny Savage is at Lincoln County Hospital for us now. Danny, what are the hospital authorities saying?
Yeah, well, this is the hospital behind me, and it effectively has a huge staffing crisis at the moment, not just at this site, but at its sites in Boston and Grantham as well. They declared this critical incident on Saturday night, and it's basically all down to the fact that lots of staff are off with COVID at the moment, and that means there are fewer staff in the hospital covering shifts. Now, they say there's significant staff absences due to COVID-19 at the moment, but they say in spite of the challenges, essential services are fully open. Now, of course, there's a bank holiday here today, so it is fairly quiet around the hospital. Most of the normal outpatient services wouldn't be functioning as they normally would be on a working weekday. A&E is open, of course, ambulances are coming and going, but that seems to be effectively running as it would do normally at the moment, albeit with long waiting times that most hospitals have. Now, it is not a unique incident from what we can tell. About half a dozen other trusts have declared similar critical incidents. They can only last sometimes for just a few days. The situation may improve, but you have a situation here at the moment where staff absences are rising, and so are the number of cases coming in with COVID. Rebecca.
Thanks, Danny. The Queen will celebrate her Platinum Jubilee this year when she becomes the first British monarch to reign for 70 years. The Queen is set to pass the milestone on the 6th of February. That's the anniversary of the death of her father, King George VI, in 1952. National festivities to mark the unprecedented Jubilee will take place in June over a 4-day bank holiday weekend. Our royal correspondent Daniela Relf looks at the significance of Jubilees.
First came the silver.
The gold coach was on its way to St Paul's and a service of thanksgiving.
"25 years later, it was the golden. More recently, the diamond. The Queen is a veteran of a Jubilee. Brian, Christine and Dave, neighbours on Park Street in Salisbury, which looked very different 10 years ago. The team photo. The residents of Park Street held a Diamond Jubilee street party in 2012. But it was much more than that. The months of planning brought neighbours together. New friendships were made. Community spirit was strengthened.
It's your sense of identity and belonging to this nation, as it were. You know what I mean? I'm Welsh, but it didn't matter. She's our queen. It's that feeling and getting together, one big family, as it were.
Well, one big memory is the colourful tables bending, groaning under the weight of the food. There was definitely no shortage of cakes and colourful foods.
Brian, no one's lived longer on Park Street than you have, but it was transformed that day. What was it like here on the day?
Well, not seeing any parked cars was rather nice, and in this nice big open street where we had tables and chairs and bunting and people enjoying themselves.
The Milford Street Bridge mural was created in Salisbury for the Diamond Jubilee after people here were asked for their royal memories. Each image represents someone's recollection, a permanent reminder of royal history. This year, Salisbury and communities across the UK will turn their mind to the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, where much of the focus will be on creating a lasting legacy to mark the longest reign in British history. And this year, that lasting legacy wants us all to get planting.
You stick all these things in.
Back in October, the Queen met local school children and launched a tree planting season on her Balmoral estate.
Thank you very much. That's very kind.
It's part of a UK-wide project to get trees planted to mark the Platinum Jubilee, alongside a 4-day bank holiday weekend in June for a national celebration.
Daniela Rolfe reporting. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Bye-bye. Hello, you're watching the BBC News channel with me, Rebecca Jones.